So welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. And today, Stephen and I are going to talk about the relationship between yogic breathing and cerebrospinal fluid flow. And this relates very directly to the practice of breathing through the central channel that we do in subtle energy meditation. It relates to Kriya Yoga breathing and so on. So this topic was prompted by a post of a study on the Heart Mind Alchemy Lab. And so I thought where we'd start is just by reading through some key elements of that study. So I'm just gonna pull that up on for me so I can read it, and let's just go through a little bit of this. So cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, is a clear fluid that bathes the central nervous system, or CNS. And it does that by filtering through and flowing through and around the spinal cord and around the brain. So together with interstitial fluid, CSF plays a critical role for the removal of waste products from the brain and maintenance of CNS health. So in this study, their hypothesis was that the primary mover of cerebrospinal fluid is this the pulsatile movement in the cardiac and respiratory system. So it's both the pulsing movement or the movement of the pulse, and as well as respiration that drives this flow of fluid. And they examined the impact of 4 different types of breathing on this flow of cerebrospinal fluid. So slow breathing, deep abdominal breathing, deep diaphragmatic breathing, and deep chest breathing. And what they observed was that there was a tremendous increase in cerebrospinal fluid flow during this slow, deep diaphragmatic and deep abdominal breathing. Okay, not so much during deep chest breathing. So it was really that slow, deep diaphragmatic breathing that increased cerebrospinal fluid flow. And so why is that important? It's important because, especially because of the removal of solutes and metabolic waste from the brain and around the spinal cord. So this waste removal plays a key role in a number of disease pathologies, such as Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's really important that we optimize this flow of cerebrospinal fluid for the health of the central nervous system. Okay, so let me go down and go through a few more key elements of the studies. So one of the key principles of regular yogic breathing is to make the breath slower, deeper, and rhythmical, which is associated with the self-regulatory mechanism and many health benefits. So systematically paying attention to sensations of breathing, yogic breathing may be aimed to improve both metacognitive awareness of mind-body connections and interoception. And since cerebrospinal fluid is sensitive to respiratory dynamics, then that was the focus of this study. And so let's go down. And they also, one thing that was interesting in this study was they needed people to be supine. They had to be lying on their back because they were putting them through an MRI machine. So that's something we might talk about, because posture is also an important part of the central channel breathing. But for this practice, they had to have breathing practices that you could do lying on your back. Okay, so then they describe kind of why is deep abdominal breathing why does it have this effect? And it says during abdominal breathing, the diaphragm is utilized as the inspiratory muscle, and it changes the intrathoracic pressure and volume when you're breathing deeply like this. So let's just talk a little bit about how that works by a little visual demonstration for those of you who are watching, and I'll describe it for those of you who are listening. So standing up here, if you can imagine, this is the base of my ribs. So at the base of your ribs is your diaphragm, and in a resting position, your diaphragm is kind of in a domed position. And as you breathe in deeply, that is motivated by the downward contraction of the diaphragm. So as you breathe in deeply, the diaphragm presses downward and flattens. That opens up breathing space for the deep into the lungs. So deep diaphragmatic breathing gives you a breath that goes deep into the lungs. And then also there's this pressing down on kind of the digestive tract. So this pressure downward gives a sensation as if this lower abdomen is filling up, okay? And so that's the in-breath. And then on the out-breath, the diaphragm returns to its domed position, and breath is exhaled, and there's a feeling as if the pressure comes out or releases in the lower abdomen, so it feels like it relaxes inward. So that's the mechanics of a deep diaphragmatic breath and why it feels the way it does. It feels like there's this buildup of pressure or volume in the lower abdomen. So it feels like you're filling up the lower abdomen. You're actually just filling up the lungs, but that pressure downward of the diaphragm gives you a feeling like you're filling up the lower abdomen. And that has an effect on the flow of cerebrospinal fluid up through the spine and throughout the brain, okay? So any of you who've done the central channel breathing or Kriya breathing, is that lights may be going on, because that's the feeling you get, right? You get this, as you take that deep breath down into the abdomen, you feel this kind of buildup of pressure down there, and then you feel this rising current up through the spine and throughout the brain. And it has a powerful effect on your state of consciousness in terms of this real energized, highly focused, bright state of clarity. And so with that as an introduction, just the mechanics of it and how this study backs up scientifically by measuring cerebrospinal fluid flow, something that we have experienced in practice, but we might not understand, well, why do we have this sensation of energy moving up the spine? So could it be that it's because we're sensing this flow of cerebrospinal fluid up the spine and into the brain? Well, that's certainly happening. It's shown to be happening. And another quality of fluid moving through connective tissue and out into the brain is that whenever fluid moves through a space, it generates an electrical current. Okay, so it's movement of fluid that relates to movement of current. And we can feel that, or at least with practice of this kind of breathing, we can feel that. So Stephen, I know you have a lot to share on this from various different practices that you've done and that we've taught. So I'll pass it over to you for elaboration.
Kevin, thank you. And love and blessings to everybody who is watching and listening. So I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are. So I'm going to talk about this yogic breathing, just as Kevin is, and speak a little bit to the yogic practices and the Tibetan practices, particularly those of Kriya, as Kevin's spoken about, and the practices of Tummo, or in a fire. And exactly as Kevin was describing, you know, this flow of energy or current up the spine. that gives rise to this light or this brightening or this clarity is exactly at the heart of what we're speaking about and why it's so important. So I always go back, first of all, Kevin, to this wonderful story about, it was with Muse, that when they first did these experiments with Muse, and they went to a rather isolated part of around Tibet, where they brought the headsets to the monks, and they gave the headsets to the monks and said, basically, we want to test you. And the monks started to put them around their chest or lower, around their back. They sort of tried to strap on, and the researcher said, what are you doing? They said, well, you want to test where the energy is. You want to, and they said, oh, no, we want you to put them on there, and they said, but why would we put them on there? Because of course the love and the compassion, certainly our perception of it is that it's coming from your heart, and it's and the power, like you and I both know from qigong and tai chi and kung fu and so on, that it's coming from deep down in the chi center, right down the lower dantian. So that power that we're speaking about is really generated over through this whole incredible, amazing body technology. It's not, we tend to focus on headsets and EEG these days, but we're not measuring the rest of the system. So I've always been a great proponent for some years now that we don't have a device to measure that flow of Kundalini force that certainly I feel and you feel, and many of those who are listening here feel. That's actually also part of our system. It's not separate from us. We are that. We are that force, that power. And I'm going to go a little bit into that. And then I know at the end of this, Kevin's also going to guide you into practice, really, which helps direct you to this inner power that's in the lower dantian. So the Tibetan monks and their kind of reaction to having things put on their heads was a real classic pointing to, yes, we're missing measuring the heart. I'm not just talking about the heartbeat or the heart HRV, but actually energy, the energy field, the electromagnetic field that the heart generates, that we know already from research is very large, and the fact that this energy in the lower spine, that there is a force in that whole lower dantian. So if we were to measure it in the three tradition, the upper dantian being the EEG headset, and the mid dantian being the HRV and all the other related energies, including the energies we're not measuring, and the lower dantian, which we're barely touching. And in fact, there's a Japanese researcher who has really looked closely at that and has tried to design devices around measuring those lower energy centers. And so that's first of all what I want to say is that I think we're missing it completely by just measuring a third of it and having some kind of focus, which heart math does do, on the heart.
A measured field of the heart extending well beyond the body, right?
Correct. So there's these three, I really want to emphasize the importance of the three dantians. And I know in the Raising Our Vibration courses that we do together, we actually guide people through practices that are constantly focusing on developing insight and clarity and a felt sensation in those areas. So that's the first part, is that if you're just putting a headset on and that's the only measure that you're using, then you're missing two major sections of your body.
Right.
Even
and the lower dantian is the foundation, right?
Correct.
That's the power generating center that drives the whole process.
Exactly. Now, so I'm going to point out a little here about the Kundalini force itself, because I was contemplating this overnight, because Kevin and I always have a wonderful way of doing these podcasts where we talk about it beforehand, and then we think, oh, I wish we'd recorded that one too, because we often are having very rich discussions about the subject matter prior to doing this. And I was contemplating what Kevin and I had experienced in our own practices, and that is, both of us have done years of martial arts, and Kevin's done years of qigong and tai chi, and I've done years of qigong, tai chi, and kung fu. And for example, the horse stance, where you stand up, and you could do this now. It's pretty simple, right? You stand up and you sit down in this powerful stance with your legs wide apart, and the best idea is hold your belly, or in my make fists. I call them Vajra fists. You make them at the side and jam them in your hips there, and really sit in this very grounded posture. And we used to stay there for hours. And I'm not kidding. You'd stay there till your body shakes, and then you have to stop, and then the instructor said, it's okay, just relax. So you'd stand up and rest, and then you'd drop down into that again, and you just hold it. And then, of course, that power that you start, so you can relax and sit down now, but that power that you develop in that lower dantian, and especially in those bottom energy centers, you realize in our society, we don't do a lot of energizing around that particular area, because we're quite sedentary and we sit a lot, but we're not actually energizing that center. We're just sitting. And of course, people develop some quite poor habits around posture, or even about feeling sluggish, or that whole couch potato syndrome is all connected around us not being aware of what's going on in that lower energy center. So what you were describing, Kevin, about the real importance of the lower dantian, and that being the foundation, Yogananda, in his practice, so now I'm going to go a little over into Kundalini and Kundalini awakening, and that Kriya energy and the power of this at the base of the spine. So Yogananda spoke about the Kundalini force as being a coiled creative life force that's right at the base of your spine. So if you're listening to me, you could just bring your attention down there. So right at the base of your physical spine, and actually at the base within your physical spine, there's an astral spine. And that astral spine is like a spine of light that Yogananda often used to talk about. So there's this coiled creative life force right at the base of the spine, that's known as Kundalini. And people often ask me, have you had a Kundalini awakening? It's not like that for me. It's not an object that wakes up. It's actually a natural part of me and you, Kevin, and everybody else. And I actually feel it like a genuine current. So when you were speaking about the cerebrospinal flow, it actually feels like there's an ocean inside me. So when I draw like if I do that now, I can feel it right now. There's a current running straight up my spine. And for me, it feels like an ocean current. And I know for those of you that are listening, you might feel it in different ways. And it was always symbolized as this serpent force. Now, so when that creative power at the base of your spine is asleep, so using our couch potato metaphor, then it just simply flows down, and in Yogananda's terms, flows outward, and it feeds all the senses. So it kind of becomes uncontrolled. So you could think of that as the couch potato. You just sit there, there's just eating your chips, nothing much is happening, feels sluggish, there's no real movement. But when the pure Kundalini force is awakened by you as the yogi or yogini, it rises to the brain, so it rises straight up this channel. That's what it feels like. You'll know it because that Kundalini awakening feels like this extraordinary force. It's like being struck by lightning, and it's transformed into the bliss of spirit, which is often what people speak about when they say they have an enlightening experience, or they have satori, or it feels like the light switched on. It could feel like a literal light, could also feel like just a brightening in your brain. Now, Kevin's already spoken about this. The cerebrospinal fluid is actually traveling up and igniting. It's actually, in Joe Dispenza's words, it's igniting and pushing against crystals that are in the brain, and that actually create a brightening effect. He did a lot of research on that, which is very interesting, that you can look at in your own time. But he looked at the effect of the cerebrospinal fluid and its interaction with the brain. So there's this uplifting serpentine current. And that Yogananda maintained that was the supreme force for human liberation. And it came from the lower dantian, from the base of the spine. And so he maintained that that ultimately ascension, this ascending energy, drawing that cerebrospinal fluid, drawing that current up and through six spinal centers or energy centers up to the crown was actually the way that you unite scientifically with God or with Source. You unite with this all-pervading thousand-petal brilliance in the highest center in the brain, which is in the Sahasrara, right at the crown. And that ascent of consciousness through the spine can only be achieved by this movement of the energy upwards, by drawing the energy upwards. So Kriya itself, which is, again, Yogananda speaks about as the scientific method of meditation, is all about connecting to the internal consciousness that it lies latent at the base of the spine, and that this, most of the time in our life, we're drawn down and we remain in those lower centers. And you know, there's a lot of practices that kind of steer people away from that, saying, oh, that's where all the material sensory perceptions happen. That's where all our kind of our lower energies happen. And that, you know, the celestial, you know, lovers and poets and, you know, divine romances, they operate from the heart, and the wisdom yogis that operate from the crown. And in fact, without awakening those lower energy centers, you won't feel that flow of fire, or what sometimes called the way of light. You don't have the exact. Now, so that, Kevin, that's a perfect segue into that, because I wanted to speak now about the inner fire and the fuel, because again, so Yogananda speaks about the fuel as being like a light or a fire, and he mentions that we to attain liberation, or to attain ascension, or to liberate the energy in the spine, we want to follow the path of fire. And that fire means that life energy that's called at the base of the spine, the Kundalini power. And the first step of that is to start to understand how prana works, how the breath works, and how the fire in the spine works. So I'm not going to go into the mechanics of Kriya now, but in simple terms, you do a lot of energy exercises that awaken the base of the spine, the energies at the base of the spine. So a simple exercise you can do it with me now, is just to chant directly into that energy center, just so you can actually feel it. Like if I chant Om, right into that base of spine, right down in the perineum there. So go as low as you can. Go as low as you can. I always remember that feeling, same sort of feeling in Qigong comes through, you know, low. You want to really feel a sense of humming, chanting Om, and almost like you're piercing that base of the spine with that chant. So you go So you start to become aware, oh, there's an energy center down there that I don't pay any attention to. you just have that simple realization that there is a life force, and that it exists, and that I don't pay attention to it. And it's right down in the base of the spine, and that it can move, right? Because the moment that you actually, by chanting down there, that you feel something, even just a vibration is a movement, right? So if you have a vibration that moves, you can move it. You can move a vibration anywhere in the body. If you do a whole body chant, if you go, oh, and feel like your fingers, hands, toes, head are all, then you've got an overall vibration. So sound, and the use of resonance, vibration, sound is a particularly useful one if you're kind of beginning going, oh, well, I don't really feel it. I don't know how to feel that energy in the base of my sound. Can, you know, and the deep and powerful and consistent use of sound. So I do these practices. I chant those own practices in the energy centers, beginning with the lower energy center and working my way up into the sacral center, navel center, heart center, throat center, third eye or brain center and crown center. I do those practices every morning. I've done them for more than 40 years. So they generate, so I can feel right now, right? All my energy in my spine is moving. So Yogananda spoke about this way of fire and he called it the inner fire and the way of light, which is this ascension of energy up the spine, just like the cerebrospinal fluid. It's the same parallel, and it's the same energy, same movement.
And all the chants, right, start with taking a slow, deep, diaphragmatic breath, right?
Exactly.
Right. That's how you draw it in, and then that extended chant is powered by that slow, deep, diaphragmatic breath. So it all ties together: the sound and the breathing, right, and the movement of the fluid.
In the movement of, exactly, all of those, like a lot of research has been done on chanting to show that there is a raising of different brain levels as you start to energize the body itself through the body, heart, brain, through chanting, because it has a genuine vibrational effect on the body. I mean, you feel it. I don't need to really say any more than that, but the feeling alerts you to the felt sensation and your ability to direct energy into the body at different centers. So if you chant now at the heart, just a simple right? It feels there's a mid-dantian feeling to it. And if you chant at your crown, it feels different. There's a different felt sensation. So the mere simple practice of directing chants and sounds and vibration resonance into different parts of your body over an extended period of time. And I know Satguru, for example, Kevin spends a day, 7 hours chanting. And when I've chanted with the Hare Krishna groups, and when I've chanted in very long retreats with Tibetan monks or on Yogananda's ashrams, we used to chant for hours and hours and hours prior to meditating. And when you start to meditate after that degree of resonance and vibrational work, you're totally in the zone. There's not
right. That's the preparation, right?
That's exactly. Yeah. So the inner fire, which I just, and I'm going to give you a really small taste of the inner fire through Vase breathing. So just as Yogananda, expressed that the real key is what he called the way of light, or feeling the fire, or the fire breath, or working with the consciousness of the inner fire. The Tibetan Buddhists, whom I've practiced with also for many, many years, spoke about the same thing. And the Vase breathing itself is a really simple technique that they do prior to inner fire practice. And I would advise you, if you're going to do inner fire practice, I would actually learn this off a lama or somebody who has practiced this for many years, because it's a very sacred technique, and it also requires a degree of skill around working with those inner fire energies, the fires that can be liberated. So you can certainly do these practices, but I really advise you getting good tuition. And it's like everything. If you're going to do Kriya Yoga, I advise you doing that with a Kriya Yogi. If you're going to do inner fire practice, do it with a Tummo practitioner. If you, just like with raising our vibration practices, when we guide people through our courses, people experience, we've noticed so many times, people experience both individually and collectively these extraordinary ahas because they're actually following a dedicated process and they're practicing. So if you do this practice like Vase breathing and you go, oh yeah, I get it, and that's it, right? I've practiced inner fire practices also for nearly 40 years. So they actually are genuinely deep, powerful practices that might seem simple at first, but the subtleties in them can open you to, extraordinary benefits. So the Vase breathing I'm going to do with you so I'm going to kind of guide you into just one simple version of the Vase breathing. And Kevin mentioned about posture. So ideally, when you do the Vase breathing, and as I say, this is a prelude only to the inner fire practice. When you do Vase breathing, you want to do it on an empty stomach where you're feeling really comfortable. So you don't want to do this on a full meal. So if you're listening and you've just had breakfast or dinner or something, then I'd suggest doing this a bit later. Now, first of all, posture. So I want you to check your posture. Your posture is really important. The body should be very straight, because vase breathing simply can't be effective if your body's bent or squeezed. So one of the things Kevin and I were talking about using different illustrations for this, and we found a picture of a wonderful person in robes meditating, but their posture wasn't very straight. It was kind of slumped. So we didn't choose that picture, because the posture, as the Buddha recommended, is incredibly important. The posture and the way that you hold the body straight actually allows that cerebrospinal fluid to flow, and actually allows this current of energy to rise up the spine. So as you're sitting there, I want you to, first of all, just be aware of, you can close your eyes if you wish doing this. Just simply be aware of what's present. So you might be aware of aches and pains in the body sensations. So just simply be aware of them. And just be aware, like pay attention to the body, get to know it a little bit, make friends with it. And the vase breathing actually has 4 basic steps. We're going to inhale and then fill the right and left channels. So either side of your central channel, there are 2 other channels called the Ida and Pingala. So you're going to imagine, feel, visualize that you're drawing energy down and into that, right down into your navel chakra. And then you're going to milk the air from the side channels into the central channel. And then you're going to exhale and shoot the energy up like an arrow. Okay, so while you're sitting there straight and you're aware of the sensations in your body, be very aware. All right, and particularly bring your awareness right down to the base of the spine and then also to the navel. And I want you to make your hands into what I call Vajra fists. So you're going to place the tip of the thumb at the base of your ring finger and close the 4 fingers over the thumb. So it's a little bit different. That you're actually connecting your thumb to the base of your ring finger, then closing the other fingers over that. That's called a Vajra fist. It's just a particular way of holding your fists. And then I want you to place your hands on top of your thighs with your arms really close into your body, and then lock them straight so that your arms are actually straight. Right, so you've got this really quite powerful posture. It really kind of holds you upright. What you're actually doing is you're kind of supporting yourself. Your arms are locked straight. You're making fists, and you're stretching your body upwards as much as possible, enabling the airs to flow better. Now, if you don't normally sit like this, you might find this quite an aha just straight away, thinking, oh, I can feel kind of air or movement in my body already. You don't have to sit like this all the time. We're just actually only going to do a simple breath. And generally what you do in the Tibetan Buddhist practices is you visualize yourself as a deity, or visualize yourself as an empty, vast, open sky, or an ocean of being. So if there's something that appeals to you, just to kind of feel that you're empty, that you're vast, and that there's no identity or form, there's no past or future. Just feel into that. And then notice the energy centers in your body. So particularly notice those lower energy centers. And then notice your heart, and then the upper energy centers. And then I want you to concentrate on your navel for a moment. And the navel energy center is described as 3 or 4 finger widths below your actual physical navel, and then back in towards your spine. Okay, so now while you're sitting like this, I want you to inhale. So breathe in slowly and gently through both nostrils until your lungs are completely filled. And you're going to visualize that, or feel that the air is filling 2 side channels either side of your physical spine. So bring in a complete breath. slow, gentle. And then kind of visualize that these channels in your body, the right one, the left one, either side of your main spine, filled with air, as if you kind of got inflated balloons in your body, so you're really filling up. And then as you hold your breath, swallow a little saliva, tense your diaphragm, and press firmly down. So you're holding your breath all this time. Feel that the downward movements push the inhaled air all the way down the two side channels into this energy center, this fire center at your navel chakra or navel center. So you might need to have just a little force to hold the air here. We're just about there, still holding your breath, pressing down with your diaphragm. Tighten the pelvic muscles, tighten the lower pelvic floors, because you're bringing the lower areas up to embrace the upper areas of the navel center. So you magnetize it. It feels quite powerful, right? Hold it. Hold your breath as long as you can. Okay, and then when you can no longer comfortably hold your breath, exhale through your nostrils and visualize that there's an arrow shooting straight up the central channel, like a fire arrow, shooting all the way up and absorbing inside the central channel. Energizing breath. Your lungs are completely empty. Just rest for a moment, because I'm going to hand over to Kevin, who's going to guide you even deeper into this. This is just a really simple exercise called Vase Breathing. You might feel the energy or winds moving in the central channel. To keep the energies or winds inside the central channel, you might find the energies are absorbed there, or that they're moving upwards. They're moving up to the crown, or there's a brightening of the field from within. That's it. It's very simple. It's a really beautiful practice. Very simple. So I'm going to hand over to Kevin. He's going to guide you into this re-energizing, working with that lower dantian.
Okay, so that practice was a wonderful preparation, kind of stoked the fire a little bit. And now we're going to do a very simple practice of slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing that leads to just a natural rising of the energy up through the central channel. So now take your hands and just cup them in your lap, one resting in the other with the tips of your thumbs touching lightly. And just feel your cupped hands just resting down in your lap. So it's like they're forming the bottom of a bowl. And feel that your hands and your pelvic bowl together form this bowl that rests down into your seat. So you can feel kind of a heavy weight to this bowl that just presses down into your seat. So your hands and your pelvis form this pelvic bowl. And so now as you breathe in, feel a downward and outward pressure filling this pelvic bowl from the bottom up. So breathe in, feel a downward and outward pressure filling the pelvic bowl from the bottom up. And then as you breathe out, just allow your attention to rest in the center of the pelvic bowl. So again, breathe in, feel a downward pressure, downward and outward, filling the pelvic bowl. And as you breathe out, just rest your attention in the center of the pelvic bowl. So let's do a couple more of those breaths. So you can feel this intra-abdominal pressure as you breathe in, this downward, outward, and upward expansion. Okay, and now as you breathe in, you feel this downward and outward pressure and filling of the pelvic bowl. And at the same time, feel energy concentrated at the perineum. So this pressure downward is really concentrating at the perineum as the pelvic bowl fills. And then as you exhale, you concentrate your focus at the perineum as if the perineum is becoming energized, kind of heated up. You might feel warmth or a tingling at the perineum. So continue this breathing, just adding that focus of downward pressure and energizing of the perineum. One more time. And now as you breathe in, you feel that downward and outward pressure and filling. You feel the perineum energized, and you gently squeeze the perineum. And then as you exhale, you feel that energy building in the perineum. So breathe in, you feel this downward and outward pressure filling the pelvic bowl, energizing the perineum, and you squeeze the perineum. And then as you exhale, you feel this energy like this sacred fire burning in the perineum at the base of the spine. And again. Now finally, as you breathe in, you feel this downward and outward pressure and filling of the pelvic bowl. You're squeezing and energizing the perineum, and you feel that that downward pressure creates a natural upward flow right up through the central channel from the perineum right up to the crown point at the top of your head. And then as you exhale, the energy just flows down the sides of the spine, returning to the perineum. So breathe in, feel the downward and outward pressure and filling. Squeeze the perineum and feel how that downward pressure drives the flow of current right up through the central channel, from the perineum right up through to the crown point. Pause and hold it. Feel that whole central channel activated. And then relax and exhale. Let the energy flow down the sides of the spine to the perineum. And just one more time. Breathe in. Feel that downward pressure at the perineum. Squeeze the perineum and feel that driving stream of energy right up through the central channel, an electrical current right up from the perineum to the top of the head. Pause and hold it. Feel the whole spine tingling with this electric current. Now relax and let the energy flow down the sides of the spine. And then just let go of breathing. Just feel this gentle current in the whole spine, in the whole brain. Just allow it to flow of its own accord. Just notice how you feel. You might feel warm. You might feel more alive, more alert. More integrated from bottom to top. The lower, middle, and upper dantians are all lined up, communicating. Energy is flowing. All is well. You feel the vibrancy of life energy. And this vibrancy of life energy connects you with all of us, with the one life we all share. Now, very slowly begin to open your eyes and feel this inner current with your eyes open. Feel how it connects you with the space all around you. It's one space, vibrant, alive, awake and aware. A boundless, luminous presence that you are. Thank you, Stephen, for the wonderful guiding. Thank you all for practicing along with us. And if you'd like more information on subtle energy practices, including on our 10-week subtle energy meditation course, which we're starting a new one coming up shortly, you can visit raisingourvibration.net. And we'd love to hear from you there. We'd love to receive questions from you there. You also can learn about our community of practice on our Raising Our Vibration community Facebook page. So until next time, bye for now and enjoy your practice.